Indonesia, an archipelago of over 17,000 islands, is a country with a rich tapestry of languages and cultures. The official language, Bahasa Indonesia, is spoken alongside hundreds of local languages. However, a significant part of Indonesia's linguistic heritage is tied to Dutch. Despite Indonesia achieving independence from the Netherlands in 1945, the Dutch language has left an indelible mark on Indonesian society. This video delves into the historical, cultural, and socio-political reasons behind the enduring presence of Dutch in Indonesia. The Dutch first arrived in the Indonesian archipelago at the end of the 16th century. They were initially drawn by the lucrative spice trade, particularly in valuable commodities such as nutmeg, cloves, and pepper, which were in high demand in Europe. In 1602, the Dutch East India Company (VOC) was established, becoming the primary instrument of Dutch colonial expansion in the region. Over the next few centuries, the VOC and later the Dutch colonial government exerted considerable control over Indonesia, influencing its economy, politics, and culture. The VOC's influence expanded gradually through treaties, military conquest, and strategic marriages, solidifying Dutch control over key parts of the archipelago. By the early 19th century, after the fall of the VOC, the Dutch government formally established the Dutch East Indies as a colony. Dutch colonial rule lasted for over 3 centuries, from the early 17th century until the mid-20th century. During this period, the Dutch established a complex administrative system, built infrastructure, and introduced Western education. During colonial rule, Dutch was the language of government, law, and higher education. It was the medium through which policies were made and enforced. Most official documents, legal proceedings, and educational materials were written in Dutch. This ensured that a select group of Indonesians, particularly those involved in administration or educated in colonial schools, became proficient in the language. One of the significant ways Dutch was disseminated was through the education system. The Dutch established schools where the medium of instruction was Dutch. While these schools were primarily attended by the children of Dutch settlers and the Indonesian elite, they played a crucial role in spreading the language. The establishment of higher education institutions like the Technische Hogeschool Bandung, now the Bandung Institute of Technology, further cemented Dutch as the language of the educated class. A distinct community known as the Peranakan Dutch emerged during the colonial period. This community comprised people of mixed Indonesian and Dutch ancestry. The Peranakan Dutch often acted as intermediaries between the colonial rulers and the local population. Dutch was commonly spoken in their households, and their children were educated in Dutch schools, leading to a bilingual culture that straddled both Dutch and Indonesian identities. Dutch also found its way into Indonesian literature and media. Many Indonesian intellectuals and writers were educated in Dutch and were influenced by Dutch literature and journalism. Newspapers, magazines, and books in Dutch were widely available, contributing to a literary tradition that included works in both Dutch and Indonesian. Notable Indonesian writers like Pramedia Anuntatur were influenced by their Dutch education and often wrote in or translated works into Dutch. After Indonesia declared independence in 1945, there was a concerted effort to promote Bahasa Indonesia as the national language. Dutch was gradually phased out of government, education, and media. However, the transition was not immediate, and Dutch continued to be used in various domains for several decades. Many Indonesians who had received their education in Dutch continued to use the language in professional and academic settings. The legacy of Dutch in Indonesia is also evident in the vocabulary of Bahasa Indonesia. Many Dutch words have been absorbed into the Indonesian language, particularly in fields such as law, administration, technology, and daily life. For example, words like kantor, office, buku, book, kereta, train, and sekolah, school, are derived from Dutch. This linguistic borrowing reflects the deep influence of Dutch on Indonesian culture and society. Today, Dutch continues to be taught in some Indonesian schools and universities, particularly those with historical ties to Dutch institutions. The study of Dutch is often pursued by students interested in history, law, and literature, as many historical documents and literary works are written in Dutch. Scholarships and academic exchanges between Indonesia and the Netherlands also promote the study of Dutch. Indonesia and the Netherlands maintain strong diplomatic and economic ties. Many Indonesians who work in international business or diplomacy find proficiency in Dutch advantageous. The Netherlands is also home to a significant Indonesian diaspora, and cultural exchanges between the two countries further foster the use of Dutch. Dutch colonial architecture, art, and cultural practices have left a lasting imprint on Indonesia. Cities like Jakarta, Bandung, and Semarang feature Dutch colonial buildings that serve as a reminder of the historical connection between the two countries. Museums, cultural institutions, and historical sites often present information in both Indonesian and Dutch, preserving the historical narrative.